There are some new images and details for the Batman 2022 thanks to a newly published article by Empire magazine here in the UK. We got new images for a majority of the cast, interviews with the main players, and some intriguing details surrounding the production of the film and the ambition for this new take on Batman by director Matt Reeves. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the images and details, breaking down the newest looks at the film. But before I get into it, if you want to see much more videos on the Batman leading up to its release date, including the first video in my Road to the Batman series, which is starting next week, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's discuss the new images and details for the Batman from Empire magazine. So in the December edition of Empire, we get an exclusive article on the Batman, and it includes some great new pieces of information that will surely continue to build the excitement surrounding Matt Reeves' new interpretation of the Caped Crusader. Within the pages, we get discussions from the director, the ambition from producer Dylan Clark, alongside the cast with their takes on a more troubled Bruce Wayne, the Zodiac-inspired reinvention of the Riddler, the animalistic version of Catwoman, the mob boss that is Penguin, and also notes on the many influences that make this a completely new Batman film for the cinematic medium. With this magazine, we got 3 different covers, with one sporting the iconic red Batman image, a blue filtered Catwoman picture which shows off her whip and sharp nails, and also a subscriber edition of the magazine, giving us just a great new artistic look at the Dark Knight himself. But now it's time to get into all the other main images and discuss what was said as a companion to these new photos. Starting with the first set of new looks, what we learn from the article is that Matt Reeves and his team are going for the grittiest take on the character yet, but alongside this, we also get some unexpected influences discussed in relation to the character of Bruce Wayne. Like we already knew, Dylan Clark confirmed in the article that Reeves is interested in pushing this character to his emotional depths and shaking him to his core. This is a Bruce Wayne that does not yet really know exactly how to be the Dark Knight, and this influence came from the director's fascination with the comic book Batman Year One, something that Christopher Nolan also familiarized himself with, creating a fitting grounded tone, one which goes into the raw detail of how a fresh Batman with potential becomes a hero. But the producer also confirms that this is not an origin story and they are not doing Batman Begins again. This is interesting because there were false headlines saying that this was doing that approach all over again, but like many of us who know what they are going for here already recognised, this is a different story. Matt Reeves says in the article that we've seen a lot of great stories about Wayne witnessing his parents' death and then trying to find a way to cope with that by perfecting himself into the hero we know. But he makes it clear that his story is one which deals with a Batman that has already been through his origins and does not really know how to be the Dark Knight. It is a Year 2 story, and the director wants you to connect to him not only as Bruce Wayne, but also as Batman. Reeves confirms that Nirvana's Something in the Way was an inspiration because it's a song that promises a very different take on the character. It's not the playboy route they are taking, it's a version who has gone through a tragedy and resultingly become a recluse. He also made a connection to Gus Van Sant's Last Days and the greater idea of this fictionalized version of Kurt Cobain, which ultimately led him to Robert Pattinson as an actor and what he could bring to the role, especially after seeing him in Good Times. If you remember when Reeves cast Pattinson, he literally tweeted a gif of the actor from that film, so it looks like that's what's caught his attention. Reeves said that in the movie, you could really feel his vulnerability and desperation, but you could also feel his power, making him a great candidate for that Kurt Cobain ideal, where in the director's words, he looks like a rock star, but you also feel like he could be a recluse. And in regards to his tech, there's also a more self-constructed aspect to it, formulating how Bruce has been hiding away and not really socializing, which Pattinson reflects on. He says he's building all these little contraptions and things just with Alfred, and even Alfred thinks he's gone insane. He's been out every single night for 2 years, getting beaten up and shot and stabbed and burnt, and it shows. There's a bullet graze on the cow right at the beginning. I don't think that's been done before. In an ADR recording, Pattinson used Val Kilmer's batsuit from Batman Forever, and he very quickly learned that it was such a difficult task to express yourself while wearing it. This became the aim, to do a darker and deeper Batman and Bruce Wayne than ever before, expressing every ounce of his emotion through every frame he's on screen. And this inner and outer darkness is reflected in the Batmobile, Reeves claims, a vehicle that looks scary, making an appearance out of the shadows to intimidate. The one in this film is inspired by Stephen King's Christine, making the car a horror figure in itself with an animalistic appearance that Pattinson himself was stunt driving. This reminds me of how Nolan got Pattinson to drive the car during the chase scene in Tenet, and it really speaks to the commitment on display. They are truly inspired to create a successful new version of Batman for the big screen. And all of this newfound inspiration with the character and designs leads us into the next talking point, which is that Reeves and Pattinson make it clear that this film is aiming to be the start of a new trilogy, one that is separate from the DCEU and aiming as big as they can in regards to the character's on-screen history. Producer Dylan Clark said to Empire, "As the first standalone Batman in 10 years, the hope is we can lay a foundation that you can build stories upon." And by that, he means they are adding to the already announced GCPD and Penguin HBO Max spin-off series. But as Pattinson stresses, they want to make this initial film hit the mark first, and they aim at capitalizing on it by crafting a new set of feature films. He said, "I've made a map for where Bruce's psychology would grow over 2 more movies. I would love to do it." With this new Batman, Reeves is bringing a personal aspect too, not connecting it to the DCEU after a re-evaluation of the situation post Ben Affleck. The actor stepped down from the role, and Reeves wanted to keep a film in the pipeline but make it a new take that, as mentioned, could be a springboard for a new standalone series of great movies. The director is hoping to deliver a story that feels distinct to the others that have come before, and a passion project that they are trying to leave their mark on. As stated, they are trying to do a noir and also find a way to make it the journey of a man who's still in transition while he's trying to get to the heart of this crime that is tearing apart the city. This gave the director the core of his plot, one which, like other interpretations, has crossed subgenres that don't make it into the family-appropriate comic book film. It's a true noir about a serial killer on the loose in Gotham City. But with all of this darkness and edginess in building a different kind of Batman film, Matt Reeves does reassure that this feature will of course have that crucial action popcorn aspect too. So you can expect a balanced approach, but one that primarily is looking at challenging the psychology of Pattinson's character. And speaking of balanced filmmaking approaches, if any filmmaker raised the bar for Batman stories theatrically, it's Christopher Nolan. The whole trilogy was groundbreaking, but in particular, it was The Dark Knight that became one of the defining adaptations, a blockbuster that perfectly merged mainstream and artistic techniques to create something with major cultural and commercial reflection. As Empire states, Dylan Clark commented with friendly competition, saying, "I've said this to Christopher Nolan directly. Look, we are trying to be the best Batman ever made, and we are going to try and beat you." It's really just a bit of a fun wink, but it also shows the dream big mentality that everyone on this project is striving to achieve, and to be honest, I completely respect that. You know that The Dark Knight is one of my favourite movies of all time, and I thought for years that it would be almost impossible to top it. But with Matt Reeves interested in pushing this character to his emotional depths, shaking him to his core, and trying to build a true Batman film with inventive filmmaking techniques, it is a very positive thing to hear in the reflectance of that. We'll have to see, and again, this is just in relation to their bigger goals, but it does show the enormous passion they have for making this and doing it right. But it's not just Batman who is getting the deeper exploration on film, as we learn more details about each of the main characters in this new movie. Starting with Catwoman, it's noted that with the character's movement, design and appearance, they went for something in line with the take on Batman, but also one which expresses her unique emotional state. Zoë Kravitz said in her interview with the magazine that she watched Cats and Lions and how they fight, and talked about what is actually possible when you're of her size and Batman so much stronger. She talked about her skills being fast and tricky, reflecting in the really interesting floor work that incorporated different kinds of martial arts and a kind of feline dance-like movement. This Catwoman apparently moves with precision, and Kravitz states that like her, Pattinson is not just trying to do a bunch of impressive backflips, he takes into account where we are in the story and where the characters are emotionally. With Matt Reeves also bringing a noir approach, they can explore Selina Kyle in a different way with that. She's described as the burgeoning femme fatale, slinking in the shadows around Pattinson's brooding hero. This is the origin story for her character, and Kravitz notes that it's the beginning of her figuring out who she is, beyond just someone trying to survive. There's a lot of space to grow, and I think we are watching her become what I'm sure will be the femme fatale. And the new images reflect this type of introspection, one that will hopefully be just as deep as Pattinson's, but also as entertaining through the action she commits to. Moving on, we get a further look at Colin Farrell's Penguin, with some of the best images we've had of the character so far, along with the central inspiration behind his take on the character. Matt Reeves is apparently going for a more unsettling version of the character than ever before, played by an unrecognisable Colin Farrell in prosthetics, giving us a penguin that is quoted as dangerous because of his weakness. The director and actor took their inspiration from The Godfather's Fredo, with Farrell saying, "Fredo is crippled by the insignificance that he lives within, in a family that is full of very strong, very bright, very capable, and very violent men. Which is why he commits the act of betrayal that he does, because he's weak, he's kind of broken, and he's in pain. There is a kind of fracture at the core of him, who he nicknames Oz, which fuels his desire and his ambition to rise within this criminal faction. Where that rise goes, I would love to get to explore that in a second film, if that was to ever happen," he says. And when it came to constructing the look of the Penguin, Farrell explains that he didn't want to put on weight again after finishing his role on the North Water, so they explored other means of creating this physical character. With all the makeup and prosthetics, alongside the voice work he did with Jessica Drake, a dialect coach, the character started projecting out. And with a Penguin show on the way and the footage we've already got of him looking great, he will hopefully make a fine supporting villain come the release of the film. Coming to the final character that gets some exploration in this new magazine, we of course turn our blind eyes to Paul Dano's Riddler. Now, Matt Reeves of course goes into how the villain is based somewhat on the Zodiac Killer, but as Paul Dano states, this is only the beginning. Dano said, "I liked how both grounded and big this film is at the same time, and there are some grounding forces like the Zodiac Killer, but it's still the Batman, and for me, it's much bigger, so it was important to let my imagination react to the script, rather than strictly basing it on a serial killer." And this balance is portrayed in the costume, which seems to be homemade, almost reflective of Bruce Wayne's self-constructed batsuit and personal touches. The costume was very intense, says Dano. I think the potential DIY element was actually scarier to me than the more sophisticated or composed designs we might have played with. I found working with a costume to be very powerful. When you put on something like that, there's a way to let it speak to you and tell your body something. There's a way to let it have a life of its own. He goes on to talk about the scary horror aspect of his character, which is obviously linking to the approach of this Batman film, and that the Riddler by nature is about questions, puzzles, games, and he's got the upper hand in that way. This will be used to drive Batman deeper to his core, and as Dano puts it, when it comes to the Riddler, he's interpreting trauma in a different way. It's something to really dig into. We'll have to see how Dano's take goes, but for me, it's one of the most anticipated elements of this new Batman film. Ever since I saw him in Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners, I've wanted to see him in more and more projects, and I can't wait for this new Riddler to be brought to life by his insane acting abilities. But they were all the main images and details from the new Empire edition of the Batman, and I'm sure that we will be getting many more reveals during the build-up to the release of the film this March. I think we will be getting a final trailer at the start of next year to kick off the final marketing push, but to be honest, everything they've released up until now has really kept the hype flowing, and I'm positive it will be a success for Warner Brothers. More importantly, these images and details continue to show off the extreme depth that this new film is going for, and I'm very excited to see a take on Batman that is more psychological and challenging than we've ever seen before. We'll soon find out, but I'm loving everything that we are seeing, and this new magazine article gives us an extra taste of what to expect. But I'm interested to hear what you guys thought towards the new images and info, alongside what you are personally looking forward to seeing in Matt Reeves' upcoming film. So let me know down below in the comments section. For more videos surrounding the Batman leading up to its release next year, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.